Well, the Dallas Stars are looking to get back on track, back in the win column tonight as they rematch with the St. Louis Blues. And today I'll be joined by Saad Yousuf of The Athletic to talk about this Stars team and see what they need to do in order to get back into the win column. All of this coming up on a Friday edition of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars Podcast Network, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, and you are locked on the Dallas Stars here on this Friday, December 17th. And today I'm joined by Saad Yousuf of The Athletic. He covers the Dallas Stars there. And we're here to talk about this hockey team that has been struggling over the past few games. But before we get into all that, Saad, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a hell of a week. It's been busy, but lots going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly a lot going on with just the NHL, the world of sports, the holiday season. But glad to have you on the show here to talk about this Dallas Stars team. And before we get into all of the good stuff that we have going on today, got to let the listeners know that today's episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. The holidays are right around the corner, and finding the perfect gift is tricky. Omaha Steaks makes it easy to send your friends and family an unforgettable gift guaranteed to be loved. You can go to omahasteaks.com and enter the code NHL into the search bar to order the perfect gift package. Well, to get straight down to business, obviously, Saad, you and I both know, and the listeners know that the Stars have, been on a losing streak after, getting off what was a franchise, record-tying 7-game win streak. And I think just kind of the biggest question I have for you, Saad, I know I've talked about it over this past week or so, but, very interested to hear your opinion on this as well. What would you say overall has been the Stars' biggest issue over the stretch of games that they've lost?
Well, I mean, I think, up until last game, the easy common denominator was just that, it was the road woes, right? Like it was in Vegas, LA, and then San Jose, but they came out, they were pretty flat against St. Louis on home ice as well. So I think part of the problem is definitely the fact that they haven't been able to find any consistent scoring. And by the way, that was pretty true in the 7-game winning streak as well. Like it was very top heavy scoring from the top line. And when you look at it, when you go on the road and you don't have last change, the Stars saw all the top matchups, top defensive matchups against Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski. And then you come home and Roope Hintz was unable to go against St. Louis. So, it hasn't, I wouldn't say the team is like drastically different. It's just, I think that top line was masking a lot of the bad stuff from even during the winning streak.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think, or I guess kind of before asking the question, I think that game against Vegas, as much of a gut punch as that game was, obviously the Stars had a chance. They were up 4-2 and almost could have gone up 5-2. But Tyler Seguin, went wide on that shot right by the net. Do you think that, just losing that game the way that they did, do you think that has any effect mentally on this team? Obviously, like you said, road woes, having to play 2 more games on the road, but against opponents in LA and San Jose that, that you could have argued, especially LA, that the Stars are a better team overall then. And I think, maybe even the Sharks on paper, a better team. Do you think just, that demoralizing loss to Vegas kind of has set the tone over these past few games? Or do you think, the team kind of was like quick to forget that game and that, maybe, like you said, something else at play overall?
Yeah, no, I think there's just a bigger overarching issue. I don't think it was like any like lingering, like that was the reason the way they lost. I mean, that was a brutal way to lose. They were up 4-2 with like 11 minutes left. And then, like you don't even get a single point out of that. Like that's a tough one. But no, I mean, they played a really good game, probably their best road game of the season against San Jose, and still managed to lose that game. So it's not like they just like kind of completely, went to a tailspin and collapsed. I mean, they played a good game against San Jose. They just weren't able to win because they're not able to find that scoring. And so I think it really does come back to just, you have to find other ways to score than just your top line.
Yeah. And speaking of the top line, I know kind of something I tackled in an earlier episode this week that, a listener asked, talking about other lines on this team. Who do you think, if you could kind of build the perfect second line for this Stars team that you think could be that secondary scoring option besides Robo, Pavs, and Roope? Who do you think those three guys would be for you if you could build that perfect second line that could potentially generate some offense when those top three aren't on the ice?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, in practice today, and by today I'm talking about Thursday, the second line being Jamie at center, Tyler at right wing, and Jacob Peterson at left was pretty good in terms of just on paper. Obviously, we know Tyler Seguin has been struggling mightily, so I don't know how that translates on the ice. I think that's a good attempt to get Tyler going, but I mean, I think Jamie and Denny Gurianov, like I think those two being together have had success. So like I guess you could like reunite the Raffle Ben Gurianov line and roll that out as a second. So I think there's that. I don't know. I think that's probably the way that I would go. And we're talking about guys on the roster, right? Because like I don't know, like a Ben Sagan, Ben P and Damiani could have been kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably the way I would go. I would probably go either going back to the classic Raffle Ben Gurianov or I don't hate on paper Peterson Ben Sagan.
Yeah, I think Peterson is a really interesting guy, a guy that isn't necessarily stuffing the stat sheet like some of the, other top guys on the roster, but a guy that's proven that he belongs on the roster, I believe. And I think Damiani, a good guy as well. Clearly, we've only seen one game from him, but I know many, including yourself, were very, quick to praise how great that shift was that he played on his, first NHL goal in his first NHL game. And I know, like I said, you and others have praised that. What's something great that you saw from Damiani, obviously, besides the goal? What made that shift so great for him in your eyes?
Well, it was just the tenacity, the overall tenacity, and I hate that that's even the case for this team, and that's kind of what Rick Bowness addressed after the game, right? Like Riley Damiani's tenacity, as fresh and as young as he is, like this is a veteran team that should not be outshined overall by a 21-year-old rookie, right? In terms of just the effort. So I think that's really what stood out most about Riley was just like, I was kind of surprised at how quickly he was moving through. Like he didn't, there was no being like really mad that first shot or the second attempt didn't go in the net. He just kept, it was like, all right, didn't go. All right, let's recharge and let's try to get this again. And he did that twice before finally getting the goal. So I think the way that he approached that and the tenacity that he went with was impressive.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I hope that, that's a wake-up call for the rest of this team that, with all the veterans, like you said, one of, if not the oldest roster in the NHL, maybe a little bit of a wake-up call that, they're happy for Riley because he got his first NHL goal, but maybe, seeing that and seeing his reaction and just, the joy in that moment maybe brings a little bit of life back into the team. It clearly didn't for the rest of that game, unfortunately, but hopefully over time that's something that we'll see for this team, especially in this game, because the Stars have not lost 5 in a row in a while, and would hate to see them do that, especially against a divisional opponent like St. Louis. And I know Stars fans always want to see Dallas get the best of St. Louis, but we'll be back with more questions after we take a quick moment to say thank you to some of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Stars. The first of those is Omaha Steaks. The holidays are around the corner, and finding the perfect gift is tricky. Omaha Steaks makes it easy to send friends and family an unforgettable gift guaranteed to be loved. Go to omahasteaks.com and enter the code NHL into the search bar to get the perfect gift package for $99.99. You can get 24 entrees like the world-famous bacon-wrapped filet mignons, chicken breasts, sides, desserts, and so much more. When you use the code NHL, you'll also get 8 additional Omaha Steak burgers for free with your order. We've all heard the reports and shortages and shipping delays, so don't wait. Order the perfect gift package today at omahasteaks.com, and you'll get 8 free burgers when entering the code NHL. Achieve gifting greatness with Omaha Steaks. Incredible flavor, incredible value, and 100% guaranteed. omahasteaks.com, keyword NHL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Built Bar. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar. Built Bar is filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, and covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel that you need to bust down those mall doors and battle those holiday shoppers. Or if you're just standing in endless shopping lines, Built Bar can give you that extra something to keep you going. So throw one in your jacket or your purse because you never know when you're going to need it. Do you like some of those marshmallow filled treats around the holidays? You need to get your hands on Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. Different flavors, all covered in chocolate, taste so good you won't believe that they're filled with protein. You can go to built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, you can get 15% off your order when you go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15. Jumping back into today's episode of Locked On Stars with Saad Yousuf of The Athletic, talking about this Dallas Stars team and ways that they can get back on track, and just talking about the team overall as a whole. And Saad, the next question I have for you, something I want to pick your brain on, and something that I know I've been thinking over this past week. Who would you say is the most important player on the Stars roster? Because my vote is Roope Hintz, and I think we've seen that over this stretch of games where he's either been kind of shut down or hasn't been playing due to his illness. And I think that that's been a huge part of, the Stars' struggle so far, is not having him on the ice. But would you say he's the most important player to the Stars team, or do you think it's somebody else?
There's arguments for a few guys. I think Roope Hintz is. I definitely wouldn't argue with you on that, but at the same time, I would remind you that when the season started, and Jason Robertson wasn't there, that Roope wasn't completely humming yet either. He was still working his way back from an injury, so maybe when he's full strength, like that line is able to withstand the absence of Robertson better than they did. But it seemed like when Robertson came back, that's kind of when Hintz and Pavelski also took to another level, and that top line really became the top line. So I think there's a case there for Robertson, and obviously the Stars have a top 10 defenseman in the NHL who's not going to be playing in St. Louis because now he's the latest one to be hit with the illness. So obviously a case for Miro Heiskanen as well. And then on any given night, you can plug in any of the goaltenders as well, right? This is a team that relies on defensive structure and keeping the score down. So, if the goaltending's not there, then it's probably not. Yeah, I mean, any of those guys, I would go anywhere from Roope Hintz, Jason Robertson to Miro Heiskanen to Braden Holtby and Jake Ottinger.
Yeah, I think those are all important guys as well. I went back and forth with myself between Roope and Miro. Just obviously, Miro I feel like hasn't done quite as much as he was doing. Still playing really well. I wouldn't say he's playing bad by any means, but certainly a guy early in the season that was, I think you could argue before Roope really got things going, could have been, the most important player to the team's success. But ever since Roope scored that goal back in November against Nashville, and when he's been on the ice, he's been on an absolute tear. And hopefully, he's back at 100% for tonight's game if he's able to play, because I know he was practicing yesterday/today whenever we're recording this. So hopefully he'll be back at 100%. And this is kind of a random question that just popped in my head, but you mentioned goalies, and clearly Ben Bishop was in the news a lot this week with the Dallas Stars. And just, another question for you personally, what is personally your favorite Ben Bishop memory or just kind of moment with his career with the Stars for someone that's just been covering this team the way that you have?
Yeah, I think with Ben Bishop, if you're talking personally, I would just say that the way his interactions and the vibe that he always carried was always different. There's one time, I don't remember which game it was exactly, but I don't know what I had going on that day, but early in the morning I had a suit on, and so came to morning skate, and Ben Bishop was just he was starting in goal that night, and usually not usually, but oftentimes, a lot of times, goalies that are starting that night are usually standoffish and just don't want to talk to anyone or nothing after morning skate. And he was just like remarking on my suit and just having a good time. And we ended up talking like fantasy football, and he's a big fantasy football nut. So, there was that. Even earlier this year when I was waiting outside the practice rink on the bench there, and he was walking by, and we had like a 20-minute discussion on just like life and things else. So he was always up for a conversation, and he was always up for chatting. And the other thing is that there was a story that I did back in, I think, spring 2019, where I outlined the differences of Anton Khudobin and Ben Bishop in their approaches and how they approach games. And Anton is a lot more free flowing and just like stop the puck at any cost type. And Ben Bishop is a little more organized in terms of watching film and things like that. So when I talked to Bishop for that story, I just remember, I thought it would be a quick, like 4 or 5 minute, get a few quotes and him telling me that's kind of how it usually goes. But instead he kind of, outlined of why he watches as much film. And then he outlined what kind of film he watches, what he looks for in the shifts, and how he prepares for shootouts. And so he was just very gracious with his time. And I think, that's something that you don't always get a lot from superstars, no matter what sport it is. So, yeah, I think that's definitely something that stands out. And then, obviously with Ben Bishop, if you ask anyone what stands out on a professional level, it's that 52 save masterpiece in Game 7 against St. Louis. To know he was doing that already on a bum knee, just makes that even more impressive. But that's always going to be number one, I think, for anybody that remembers Ben Bishop.
Yeah, absolutely. A guy that, always seemed to have a smile on his face and, friendly with his teammates, friendly with the fans and the community. And clearly you could see, the emotion in the press conference when talking about his teammates, when talking about playing for this organization. And how obviously he's still with the organization right now. He's retiring from the game, but still, a part of this Dallas Stars group and a part of the family that they have built in that locker room. And have you really seen anything at practices or in any other moments with the team with him and Jake Ottinger specifically? Is there any kind of mentorship there, or how valuable do you think it is for a guy like Ottinger to have a guy like Bishop in his life that he can kind of look up to and, talk with daily about the game and also just about life, but just developing as a young goalie in this league?
Yeah, I mean Jake himself. If you listen to his comments after the game, I actually asked him about that, and he was very. He basically said Ben Bishop is exactly who he hopes to be in the next 10 years or so. So and Ben has been very gracious with his time helping Jake. Mentoring, actually, that's one of the things that I wrote in my column, was just how much he has always been a mentor, whether it was Jake or Andrei Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay. That's something Ben has always been really, really good about. So I think that's really good. And also, it's going to continue. Like Ben is one of the best puck handling goaltenders to ever play. I think Jake has some ways to go with that. Obviously, he's only 22. He's about to turn 23 in a few days here, actually. But yeah, I think, that's something that Ben will still be around to teach. I mean, that's the cool thing, that when you have a guy that's as happy spirited as Ben Bishop is, I don't think Jake Ottinger or the Stars are really going to lose that. Like, actually just yesterday on Wednesday, the day after Bishop retired, like, he was on the golf course with Tyler Sagan and they golfed together. So, he's still around. He's still, going to be teaching and imparting his wisdom on Jake Ottinger.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable for Jake Ottinger, and even I know Braden Holtby's been around in the league a while as well, but I'm sure nice to have a guy like Ben on the team, and for the locker room in general, I think that's good that he's hanging out with Sagan and other guys, because I'm sure just what we've seen from his personality, and obviously the testament that you have to how great of a human being he is. I think that'll be good for that locker room as a whole, just to continue to have him around and. He and his family still, having a presence within the organization. But we'll continue the conversation and maybe talk a little bit about tonight's matchup between the Stars and the Blues. But before we do that, I do want to take a moment and say thank you to another sponsor of today's episode of Locked On Stars, and that is BetOnline.ag. BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues to march towards the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available in the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Jumping back into today's conversation with Saad Yousuf of The Athletic. talking about the Dallas Stars and their matchup tonight between themselves and the St. Louis Blues. The Stars looking to get revenge against their division rivals. And Saad, how concerned do you think the Stars should be? You mentioned earlier now that Miro is one of the latest Dallas Stars to catch this weird bug, cold, non-COVID illness. How concerned should the Stars be missing a guy like Miro in the lineup tonight?
Definitely concerned. There's not a single time Miro Heiskanen doesn't play a game and you're not concerned. I don't care if you're playing the Arizona Coyotes or you're playing the St. Louis Blues or whoever. So yeah, definitely some concern without Miro. On top of that, after Thursday's practice, like we had to talk to Roope Hintz, and PR was just like, hey, like he doesn't even have a voice right now. Like he really can't talk. So all that to say, yeah, Roope Hintz returned to practice on Thursday. Rick Bowness was not quick to confirm that. Yeah, he's definitely in the lineup. He basically said, yeah, looking like it. He's back. We'll see what happens tomorrow. So you're probably going with a less than 100% Roope Hintz, probably a less than 100% Alexander Radulov. Yoel Kiviranta is out. Riley Damiani and Ty Dellandrea back to the AHL. No Miro Heiskanen. It's you're on the road. It's the first night of a back-to-back. Like there's a lot going on here, and they've lost 4 in a row. So yeah, all that to say, I would be concerned for sure.
Yeah, and with all that said, what do you think is the key to victory for the Stars going into this game? Because, like you said, a lot of things stacked up against them. On the outside looking in, it seems that on paper that the Blues should win this game. But I mean, clearly this Stars team with the veterans that they have on this team, you would think they're going into this game, with the mentality of they need to come out on top. Because, like we said earlier, they haven't lost 5 in a row in quite some time. So what, in your eyes, is the key to victory for this Stars team, and how can they get out of St. Louis with a W?
I would say there's 3. For me, number 1 would be goaltending has to be strong, has to be stellar, has to make up for, whatever the loss of Miro. I mean, you go back and I often tweet these videos during games where Miro breaks up plays so effortlessly, and it's a lot of times plays that are developing don't ever even get to the goaltender because Miro negates them, before it can even get to that point. Mm-hmm. Miro's not playing, so the goaltending is going to have to be a little bit more even on point. They've been good this past week, even through the losing streak, but going to have to be a little better. The second thing, I would say that this is one of the top 5 power play teams in the NHL and in the Dallas Stars. They need to not only be good on the power play, but they need to earn power play opportunities. Like against the St. Louis Blues at home a few days ago, they had 1 power play opportunity drawn by Riley Damiani. And some people might look at that and be like, well, you can't control what the refs are calling or not. Well, if you're playing hard 5-on-5, you put the other team in a situation where they're out of position and they're kind of caught hooking or caught tripping and things like that. So you have to play a good 5-on-5 game to eventually get those power play opportunities. They need to do that. And then they have to get something out of that Peterson, Ben, Sagan line, because I'm assuming that Hintz is going to play. And so even regardless of how effective he is or not, St. Louis is going to throw their best defensive forward line, their best defenseman at the Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski line, assuming they are intact. That means secondary scoring has to show up, and that second line of Peterson, Ben, Sagan is going to be the primary spotlight, in my opinion. They have to do something.
Yeah, it'd be a really nice time for Tyler Seguin to get kind of out of his slump and really get things rolling. And I think, that he has a chance to do that. I know playing with a guy like Jamie, and then, of course, a younger guy like Peterson, who we mentioned is really gifted and deserves to be on this roster. And he seems to have a knack to step up on the road. I feel like a lot of the more recent Peterson goals have been on the road, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe we'll see a big night from him. You have any predictions for this game as far as score and maybe even first goal for the Stars?
I'll say the Blues win 4-2. And I'm gonna say the Stars get their first goal by Jason Robertson.
Okay, I like that. I hope that the first goal, I think if it comes from the top line, that at least potentially puts them in a chance to have a good game, and maybe if they can do it quick. I know they haven't really scored in the first 2 minutes of a game in a while since the win streak. But I think that would spark a lot of life in this team. I think I'll agree with you. As much as I'd hate to see the Stars lose a fifth straight, it's hard for me to envision them coming out on top. I'll say St. Louis. I'll say 3-2 just to not be the exact same. And I'll first goal. Man, that's tricky. I'm wanting to. I was thinking top line. I'll get weird and I'll say Luke Glendening. I'll say Luke Glendening gets the first goal.
It's actually not as outlandish, surprisingly, this season as it would have sounded 3 months ago. So.
Yeah, truly. I feel like, opening night, that would have been, well, and even opening night, I mean, I feel like any prediction, would have been crazy because Jacob Peterson scored the first goal in the first game for the Stars. And so the Stars are always up to weird tricks and kind of hard to predict at times, but we'll see. Maybe our predictions will be wrong. I'd love to be wrong about the Blues winning. But it'd be really nice if the Stars could get a win and then come back home and play a Chicago team that will be a really interesting matchup within itself. But excited to see the Stars team on the ice. Hopefully Roope Hintz is able to, step up and play somewhat like he's played so far this season. But yeah, really curious to see how the Stars compete tonight. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Saad, thank you again for joining the show. Guys, you can go check him out and his work at The Athletic. You can find him on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, you see his Twitter on the screen. I'll be sure to put his Twitter account in the description of the podcast on YouTube and on podcasting platforms as well. Saad, anything you want to say to the listeners before we hop off?
Well, just something that I wrote the other day. This is a big one for the Stars, just in the fact that, if they lose in regulation, it was just a damning stat that I found, found to be true is if they lose in regulation, this will be the first time they go 5 straight games without getting a point since the 2013-14 season. Think back to Lindy Ruff, first season as a coach, Jim Nill, first season as a GM, Tyler Seguin, first season as a Dallas Star. That's how long it's been that they haven't gone 5 straight games without getting a point. And if they lose to the Blues in regulation, that is what they're going to accomplish.
Yikes. Dang. So a lot on the line for the Stars team in terms of potentially making history, but not good history like we were talking about a few weeks ago. Well, that's again going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Be sure to tune in on Monday for a breakdown and recap of tonight's game as well as Saturday's game against the Chicago Blackhawks. But we will see you on Monday, Stars fans. Have a great day.